Welcome to Headlocks, Heels, and Havoc, the wildest mixed tag team in podcasting where the kayfabe drops and the chaos takes over. Let's ring the damn bell.
Headlock tight, heels on the prowl, dropping elbows, hearing growl, feel the foul. No script here, just real, no bluff. Kayfabe crack, now the dirt gets rough. Headlocks, heels, havoc in the zone. Stepping in the ring, chaos is your home. No filters, no mask, just raw, bare tone. Wrestling unscripted, we on the throne. Title bells, mic checks, crowd going crazy. Drop truth bombs, leaving lines feeling hazy. Beyond the kayfabe, past the charade, where legends are born and stories get made. Headlock, stop it, who's hitting the mat? Welcome to the havoc where the real talk's at. Tune in, step through, leave the fake at the door. Headlocks, heels, havoc, now hear the roar.
Andre Rene Roussimoff, I'm sure I butchered that, known to the world as Andre the Giant, was born in France in 1946 and grew to an extraordinary rate due to a condition called acromegaly. I can't pronounce it. It's giantism. By his teens, Andre was already a spectacle, and it didn't take long for the wrestling world to realize what they were witnessing, something once in a lifetime. Standing over 7 feet tall and weighing well over 500 pounds, Andre wasn't just big, he was unrepeatable. Promoters billed him as the eighth wonder of the world, and for once the hype was real. Andre became a global icon through professional wrestling, touring endlessly and famously going undefeated for over a decade in WWE lore. His rivalry with Hulk Hogan, especially their legendary clash at WrestleMania 3, cemented his place in pop culture history. But behind the legend was a man battling constant pain, physical decline, and the toll of fame. Andre the Giant passed away in 1993, but his legacy still looms over wrestling today, proof that some legends don't just leave a mark, they cast a shadow. Welcome to Headlocks, Heels, and Havoc. I am the legend J-Mac. With me, as always, is everybody's favorite Uncle Slam.
What's up?
And once again, returning with his walking one-liners, Mr. TM himself.
What's up, y'all?
Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget before we get started talking about the eighth wonder of the world, Andre, to go like, share, subscribe, and follow. We appreciate it. We want to keep making all this great content for you and bringing you stories like this about some of the greats in the business and having some of the best in the business today on our show. So go give us a like, share, follow, subscribe. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, we're there. I'm sorry, I'm not very right. Yeah, don't forget, if we get 10 subscribers and everything, that this man right here is going to wear his red, big, sexy pants to the EWA New Beginning show tonight. That should be a spectacle in and of itself.
There's a hole in the thigh.
But I digress. Today we are talking about one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And, you know, going back and looking, I didn't realize how, like, in his younger days, how agile Andre was.
Yeah. He could do a drop kick. I think it was they said back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he done basically. You remember the finishing move that Doink used, where he would jump off the top rope and just sit on your chest. Yeah. Basically, the earthquake move from the top rope.
Yeah.
So he done that on Big John Studd one time in a steel cage match.
Oh.
And I'm telling you right now, man, if I was John Studd was a big guy, but he looked small compared to Andre. And I'm telling you right now, man, looked like his chest caved in.
Well, everybody looked small compared to Andre. Honestly, I mean, what was he like? I think by the end of his life, he was like 7'4", maybe 500 plus pounds.
I don't think he was exactly 7'4". I think that was like an embellishment of WWE. I think he was more about 7'1", maybe 7'2".
Still, that's fucking gigantic.
Right. That's not to take away from anything.
I mean, a couple inches, shit. He was still and plus the weight too. You got to figure. I mean, he was easily, I think they said 500 plus by the time he got that, because he just kept gaining weight and he kept getting taller. So that was what his disease kind of did to him.
Andre the Giant was 7'2".
7'2".
That's still humongous. Hell, what was Shaq, 7'1"?
Shaq is 7'1".
7'1".
Easy, man. Andre was just even when he turned on Hogan, I was so shocked and surprised. But at the same time, I had a hard time hating him. You know what I'm saying? Because he was Hogan through the 70s.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? He was the larger than life star. He was just, he was an
attraction of the world.
Exactly. So it was even after he turned on Hogan, it was, for me, it was still hard to hate him. I think it was one of the greatest heel turns of all time.
Uh-huh.
Especially aligning himself with Bobby Heenan.
Bobby Heenan.
But at the end of the day, it was just yeah, but I just don't want to hate him because he's Andre, and then whenever, years later, when he turned on, he didn't turn on, Bobby smacked him in the face in that tag team match with him and Haku losing the tag team titles to Demolition. When Bobby smacked him in the face, and then he clocked Bobby one good time, and Bobby, of course, was great. He's shaking that blonde hair. No, don't hit me, boss. Don't hit me, And he clocked him, and the next thing you know, he turned around, and Haku was ready to give him that super kick. He caught that super kick, clocked him, and everything. I was like, good. You know what I'm saying? At least he got to turn back and get the fans back before anything happened. That was my take on Andre. I'll let y'all say a little word about Andre as well. Whoever wants to go first.
So for me, I think Andre, in all honesty, played such a big role in, so he's almost like a connecting factor from the early 1900s, whenever professional wrestling was so heavily protected, up through into when they started kind of letting the curtain fall a little bit. Not that he didn't protect kayfabe, but because he did 100%. But it almost because he, I remember, I think Hogan basically was talking about how he put him over, and Hogan pretty much said if Andre didn't want to lose at WrestleMania, Andre wasn't going to lose.
Right.
And so because he did protect the business, I think it almost kind of started, I in my mind, just looking back, of course I wasn't alive at the time, but it almost was like he was so larger than life that it almost played a part into the business being opened up, because, it was oh yeah, no, if that man didn't want to get beat, he wasn't going to get beat. But then at the same aspect, it helped catapult Hogan into being the larger than life figure that he was, because he beat the Giant.
Right. He was the unbeatable guy for so long.
Yeah.
That when he did get beat, and beat on that grand of a stage for that big of a prize, it became headlines in and of itself.
Right.
Regardless of who did it, just the Giant fell.
Yeah.
Uncle Slam.
Of course, I'm an '80s baby, so I grew up watching Andre. Now, looking back now, I can see how his health I guess played a part in his wrestling because he really didn't. He really couldn't do a whole bunch. I mean, like as far as he might step on you, he'd give you a good chop or so. Like he would slam you, but he really couldn't move a whole bunch, towards the end or whatever. And that's what I really remember. To me, he was terrifying. Like he was scary. He had that big face, and then he always had that big grin or whatever and shit. Um, like I was terrified of Andre. To be honest, as a kid growing up, I was like that. Like he was like scarier than the Undertaker. Like I thought he would eat the Undertaker. Honestly, as a kid. Um, so I mean, I like the child in me like really loved Andre because, like you said, he was the eighth wonder of the world. He was that guy that Hogan had to get over to become the man or whatever. Um, but now that I look back, like his matches wasn't the greatest. Now I'm pretty sure there was other matches, when he was younger and he was in better health that would probably say different. But towards the time that I remember, he had a whole lot of health issues. Hell, he had hurt his ankle. I think it was getting out of bed and shit. Like you said, he did it wrestling, but it was just getting out of bed. And I'm like, damn, when you start getting hurt just coming out of bed, that that kind of says a lot. And the doctor said he wasn't even supposed to live past 40. I think 40 was supposed to be the stretch, and he actually made it to 46.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, Andre will always be up there, even though like I put him up there with the Hogans and the Stone Cold, even though he didn't have the same, I would say, wrestling pedigree. His status was like what got him over and stuff because there was nobody like him at the time. There was nobody as big. There was nobody, you know, who was a giant. You know what I'm saying? Like he was, like either you were terrified of him or like you loved him. There was no real in between. Either kids were scared and running, or they were gonna run up to him and stuff. And I guess I was kind of one of the terrified ones and shit back in the day. But Andre was that man. Like I said, if it wasn't for him, Hogan wouldn't be who he was. You know what I'm saying? I don't think wrestling would have made it like it did. Or it would took a little bit longer.
I agree.
I don't want to say they wouldn't have made it, but I think he definitely played a big part in making them bigger than what they were at the time.
As far as like when wrestling was its most successful, I would say that like Hogan, Cena, interchangeable between Stone Cold and The Rock because they kind of shared that spotlight during the Attitude Era. I would probably give the nudge a little bit more to Stone Cold just for the fact that he took off a little bit sooner than The Rock did. You know what I'm saying? But again, Rock was stuck with that Rocky Maivia deal. But again, they're interchangeable in that slot. And then Andre, as far as carrying not just a company, but wrestling in and of itself, are the guys who are on that Mount Rushmore.
Keeping it in the mainstream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even people who didn't watch wrestling in the 70s knew who Andre the Giant was.
Yeah.
He was just, oh, that's that big old dude that wrestles. Even if that's all you knew.
Yeah.
You had heard the name Andre the Giant because there wasn't a whole lot of 7-foot people walking around in pro sports at the time, other than basketball.
Yeah.
And even back then, there was a lot of just 6'9" people, 6'10" people, until,
Long and lanky and
yes. And then, so I mean, when a 7'2", 500-pound, literal giant You know, a guy that's holding a regular beer can makes it look like one of them mini cans that they got out now in our hands. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, you know who he is. So I would have to put him on that Mount Rushmore of people that just carried wrestling in and of itself. He transcended wrestling.
Yeah, he was bigger than wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Like a famous story I remember, and on the set of Princess Bride, I remember hearing that he let out a 16-second fart,
Yeah.
and production just stopped. Everybody stopped in their tracks, and Rob Reiner, rest in peace, looked at his looked at over at him. He said, "You okay, Andre?" He said, "I am now, boss." So I mean, that's the crazy thing is like, to hear stories like that, it makes you wonder, could Andre have had a little, if he wasn't billed as that like dominant giant that nobody can beat, could he have had a little bit of a comedy, you know, side to him? I
Oh
mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think he could have. Like, I think he had a good sense of humor and stuff. Like, to kind of add to your story about the Princess Bride movie, Jake the Snake tells a story where Andre used to put you in the corner and he would just lean against you. Well, he had him in the corner and he just started. He said he felt his shoulder started vibrate and Andre was just ripping a fart for like 40 seconds. He's like, "Do you know what it feels like when a giant farts on you for 40 seconds?"
free
And Andre was
massage.
just smiling, the whole time and shit that he was doing it. It was like,
I mean, but what do you do? You know what I'm
what
saying?
can you do?
What
Right,
can
that's what I'm
exactly? What can
Yeah,
saying.
you
like
That's
do?
what
what are you
I'm
gonna
saying.
do? You're
You're
just gonna
stuck
let it
between a
happen.
ring post and a giant that's 500 pounds. It's
Yeah,
it's great.
there's
Like there's
nothing
so
you can
many great stories about Andre, and that's another thing that people forget about Andre, even in his later days. Andre Hogan was the face of that company. From the time he won that championship till the time he left.
Yeah.
But there was no doubt in anybody's mind that Hogan can be the face all he wants to. But behind the scenes in that locker room, Andre was the boss.
do.
Oh,
Oh hell
absolutely.
yeah.
He was what the Undertaker became.
Yeah.
See, that's what I was going to say. I
Yeah.
was like, he was the Taker before Taker was. He was that stable guy. He was that backstage presence or whatever.
Yep. And I think that just carried with his reputation, even back in the territory days. There's no doubt in my mind that every territory he went to, I don't think he walked in there and said, "Hey, I'm the boss." I just think it was naturally implied that,
Yeah.
whatever
That's the
this guy
boss.
thinks the business should be, the locker room should run as, is probably what we're going to do while he's here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I mean, other than like Harley Race or Haku, not even a handful of others who could stand up to Andre. And even those guys, as brave and as badass as they were, could they have done anything to Andre?
Yeah.
It's like that's not a test you want to you
Yeah.
want to put yourself in the place of. So
Yeah.
I
I
remember
know.
hearing a story where this guy was talking about Andre was drinking, and this guy, I guess he had an issue with Andre, and guy went over to him, punched Andre in the face. Andre finished his drink and was like, "Hey man, like, you have a problem with me?" And the guy just walked away and shit, fucking, because he couldn't hurt Andre and shit.
yeah,
Like, it was
Yeah.
nothing. Like,
I mean, it's almost like your kid hitting you.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's basically probably what it was. He was like, "Got a problem?"
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
know in Shawn Michaels' book, he talked about whenever him and Marty Jannetty first arrived in the WWE and how every single night for, I think he was like 2 years or so, that he was from like 88 or so to 90, I'd say, something like that. Andre be sitting there playing cards, and everybody walked up to Andre and held out their hand and said something like, have a good night, boss. Hey, boss, good to see you, boss, something like that. And him and Marty every day for like 2 years until he said Marty Jannetty gave up on it. They would walk up to Andre, hold out their hand, and say, "Doing all right, boss?" And he said every time for 2 years straight, he ignored them, would not acknowledge it, didn't even acknowledge their presence there. They were the young punk party kids. And then one night, I guess they had like a match. I don't know if it was against Andre or if he teamed with the Rockers, but they worked Andre, and they get back to the locker room, and Sean said he looked at him and said something like, "You're good, kid. You're a good kid." And he's like, "Well, boss, I've been trying to say hi to you every night for 2 years." He said, "Oh, I'll just rib it on you." They just moved on. Everything was cool.
That's it.
But I can't even imagine that amount, and I don't even want to call it like kiss ass, but every single day to walk up to somebody and try to pay your respects and having them ignore you, and not just basically being like, okay, well, that guy, I just I remember reading that chapter and it just blew my mind, because there's these, it doesn't matter how larger than life anyone in the business is or ever has gotten, nobody will ever be Andre.
Yeah.
So.
Nobody, I don't think there's ever been a wrestler that commands the universal respect that Andre the Giant got. And I think that also has to do with how he treated people in the back. And there's the infamous stories that if he didn't like you, he didn't like you.
Yeah.
Like Macho Man. He hated working with Macho Man.
Well, that was the baby oil.
Baby oil. Yep. But he said, Jake the Snake said that, man, he would stand on Macho's hair and then grab his arms and pull him up. And then, it's just like, damn, but at the end of the day, I guess what we were talking about before, you got to have a little bit of rebellion in you.
Yeah.
And to make it in the business. And, you got not rebellion. I think that's the wrong word. You just got to be able to stand up to what is bad and what could be good.
Yeah.
You got to, with respect, you've got to do it the right way. You got to earn your stripes. Don't get me wrong. But, there's a respectful way to go to a promoter and say, man, I just don't know about this.
Yeah.
If this is what your heart is set on, we'll do it. And I'll go out there and do it the best I can. But I think we would be better toned to go this way. And I think that maybe the baby oil thing was, Macho's way of rebelling, to gain that respect by Andre. I don't know that Andre, dropped his dislike for the Macho Man by the time he passed away. I never heard any stories beyond just he didn't like all the baby oil and crap.
See, Macho used the baby oil to make his muscles pop. That's why he put so much on. But, and I guess when you go in a wrestling ring, they were saying that, you rub up against people, and Andre was such a big guy, it was hard for him to get all that baby oil off as far as getting into a shower, because most bathtubs or showers weren't made for somebody that size. So, he'd have a shower that go up to his chest maybe or whatever, and he's still got to figure out a way to reach around the back side of him or get his legs or, and of course he couldn't bend or move like, normal people, where he was so big. So that's why he hated the baby oil so much, because it was just off of him. And, Macho just kept using it, and sometimes he'd throw a little extra on there, I guess, just to piss him off. I don't know.
Probably. But again, that was probably his way of kind of bucking the system a little bit and saying, hey, I'm somebody, I don't know. I know a petty way. I'm not saying that, we couldn't have just, said, okay, with Andre, I won't do that, but.
Well, you almost have to kind of assume that that's the truth, because Andre says he doesn't like something and you don't immediately just fucking go with what the Giant says, you're cruising at that point. You're looking for some shit.
Right. You're trying to. You're trying to stir the pot a little bit. And
Yeah.
like, I always said that like with Andre, when you're in the ring with him, well, even Hogan said it. When you're in the ring with him, it's either going to go the way that they planned it, and he's going to, play ball for the outcome, or he's not.
Yeah.
But with Andre, and that's in any match. But with Andre, it's what are you going to do if he doesn't?
Right.
It's just your best bet is just to play ball if he decides he's not losing, and so you don't get hurt any more than what you might.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would not want to be the wrestler that stepped into the ring with Andre the Giant knowing he was pissed off that night.
I mean, like Big John Studd, wasn't it? Because he was stepping over the ropes, and that was Andre's thing, and they told him not to, and he kept doing it anyway. And then he punished his ass in the ring for it.
Yep.
And then John got his shit and left. Like he grabbed that shit and left the whole arena.
Well, and because John Studd was mad because he wanted to be the big bad giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to beat Andre. I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen.
No. I mean, Andre is the giant. No pun intended. He is the guy he's the guy that's going to, you can be another big dominant guy.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be the king of big guys when Andre the Giant is in the territory.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was on the set of Conan the Barbarian, Arnold Schwarzenegger's got a great story where they all go out for supper, and Andre, like he tells everybody, he's like, I'm paying tonight. And so the check comes, and I guess Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to grab for the check, and he puts his hand out and says, I told you I pay, boss. And they're kind of bickering about it back and forth. He's like, no, Andre, come on, let me pay. I invited you. He said, I pay. And he just kept doing it. And finally, Andre reaches over, grabs Arnold Schwarzenegger, walks him like behind the bar or somewhere, and sets him up on a shelf and said, you stay there, I pay.
Yep.
And that's, for Hollywood, that was Conan the Barbarian. That was Mr. Universe. That was a big motherfucker. He wasn't tall, but he was, he was built. And and I think Vince struggled for years to try and replace Andre before he finally realized you can't do it.
Yeah.
All the different giants and stuff that he promoted, even I think finally getting Taker over is what sort of kind of led him to believe like, okay, well, like I'm not going to ever have my Andre again, but there's other talent out there. There's other things. Who was the big guy that, Gonzalez, what was his name?
Elegante,
the Giant Gonzalez.
Yeah.
The Giant Gonzalez. Yeah, him.
Yeah, worst match ever, I think they say.
Worst match, yeah, absolutely. And just just constantly just billing people as the next giant, and that's just it took him a long time, and I don't think he ever really completely gave up on it because with Khali and Big Show and some of these guys out there who are great talent in their own right, just never ever going to be Andre.
No.
Who do you think came the closest? You think the Big Show was the closest as far as Andre, or you think anybody just wasn't able to come close?
What parameters are we using? At least 7 foot tall?
I guess the same way we define Andre. I guess the impact on wrestling, obviously Andre wasn't a great mover because of his condition or whatever. So, I mean, you have to compare him, I guess, the same way you would compare Andre or whatever.
Excuse me. As far as big men, because I can go two ways with my answer on this.
Okay.
Because if we're just talking about big men in general, then I would say The Undertaker.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about big men that were, workers like Andre, just 7 foot and above that weren't necessarily all that athletic, but were there for the giant impact. You know, the only person that I could say even, and I think that they killed it. WCW shot themselves in the foot with it, and it could, because it could have been a good introduction, but by the time he got to the WWE, the giant part had wore off
What, Big
because
Show,
he'd been
Braun
beat up. So
Strowman?
Big Show,
Okay.
Yeah.
because he was the closest thing as far as body wise and look wise to Andre, which is why they build him as Andre's son at first and everything. And I think, like I said, they killed that in WCW, especially with the whole, which, I mean, it's not the Big Show's fault. You know, he got paid. He did what the company asked him to. He got paid. But just like Mick Foley has said about the Big Show, has anybody ever turned face heel as much as the Big Show?
Big Show almost like surpasses the whole face heel. Like one week he could be face, the next week it really depends on who he's against, who he's paired with, all that stuff. Like you could cheer him one week and boo him the next, and not even blink twice.
But they started that stuff in WCW, you know, and I think because they did that in WCW, by the time he got to the WWF at the time, WWE now, that momentum of being a giant had done worn off. And when they paired him straight up with Stone Cold, I wasn't in fear for Stone Cold because Stone Cold was too white hot at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, there's, okay, the Giants come over here. That's a big thing, but he ain't beating Stone Cold, man. I just watched him get beat up by a bunch of dudes on Nitro a couple months ago. You know, so I believe they killed that giant momentum. The Big Show in WCW, aka the Giant, he should have been somebody that never joined the NWO.
Yeah.
He should have never been on TV every week. The Big Show, aka the Giant, should have been the guy that came in at the instead of Bret Hart and all that hoopla. Sting should have went over clean on Hogan at Starrcade. And I know we're getting a little off topic of Andre, but this is the impact that Andre had, you know.
Exactly.
But Sting should have went over clean on Hogan. Now, by clean, there could have been some NWO interference.
Yeah.
But Sting should have had Hogan tap to the Scorpion Deathlock in the center of the ring. No hoopla about that. But the guy that should have come out and helped Sting should have been the Giant. He was a WCW creation, just like, well, I mean, Sting wasn't a WCW creation, but that's where he, you know, made his name. He was starting to get famous in, you know, UWF and a couple other territories. But when all that got balled up and he came to WCW, that's whenever, you know, Sting took off and became the franchise. So you had Sting fighting for the WCW, and then, well, who's here to back up Sting? He's done said he doesn't trust Luger. He doesn't trust, you know, any of the WCW locker room because they didn't trust him. You know, so he's going to do his own thing. Who was the first person that picked up Sting when he won the title? The Giant. It should have been Sting, and then, you know, when the NWO came out and tried to interfere, Sting could have taken a couple of them out, you know, boom, boom. Hogan gets the advantage again. Looks like Hogan's going to retain. All the other NWOs started to come out. What's this? The Giants come out and he starts wiping the NWO on the ringside out. He's a giant. They can't take him.
Yeah.
Kevin Nash. They made Kevin Nash look like more of a giant than they did
the Giant.
The Giant. And that harkens back to what you said earlier. Big John Studd is not going to be the big guy as long as Andre the Giant is in the territory.
Yeah.
Andre, even whenever he's beat up, is still the most dangerous wrestler in that locker room.
Yep.
In any territory, at the beginning of his career or the end of his career. You know what I'm saying? Could you imagine being the guy in the locker room that goes up to Andre when he was like a rookie and goes, "You screwed up, man. I'm sick and tired of telling you not to do," poking him.
I don't know if that was ever a thing.
Yeah. I don't think like talking to
Well,
Andre
and
like that.
do you think that, and like, I obviously, where, everything's about Andre today, that's what we're talking about, but like, I've long felt that Big Show. When we talked about this on the last, on our last live, how we don't like to use the word jobber, but I've long felt that Big Show almost became like kind of this glorified jobber, because if you beat Big Show, then you get over. Like, even who was it, Rey Mysterio, the
Yeah.
famous triple threat match with Rey Mysterio, Khali, and Big Show, and Ray won. Like, to have a win against the Big Show at one time, like, they looked at it as like this big, it should have been this big deal, but it kind of didn't, because he was always getting beat left and right and never really had a decent title win or a decent title run. He was a pretty good ECW champion, I know. But do you think that was because of the shadow of Andre kind of hovering over him?
I think it definitely affected his career. But again, I think that goes back to them trying to sell him as Andre's son.
Right.
But then WCW said, "Here's Andre's son," but then Andre's son can be beat up by 5 men.
Right.
Andre was wrestling 3 men in regular matches.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it didn't make it plausible. Well, this is Andre's son, he's a pussy.
Yeah, exactly.
Compared to Andre.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I guess that kind of just leans into WWE constantly just beating the dead horse. Because they had lightning in a bottle with, Hogan and Andre WrestleMania 3. So they're like, oh, that made money. Let's do that again 30 more times over the next 5 years, now that we have another big giant.
I tell you an underrated spot, and I'm gonna give somebody his flowers that I normally, am trying to poke jabs at Uncle Slam for. But one of my favorite, and again, to harken back to our last live with WrestleMania moments and stuff, WrestleMania 2 was a disaster. That was one of the worst WrestleManias ever. If you ever watch it, go back and like, what in the hell were they thinking? You know what I'm saying? Because the lineup and the concept was just not good. But, again, it had WrestleMania moments. Everybody remembers Bundy and Hogan in the blue steel cage and stuff and everything. But one of my favorite moments from WrestleMania 2 was the Battle Royal, where it came down to Andre and the Hart Foundation. And I got to 100% agree with Bret Hart on this one, that when Anvil and Bret were the last two in the ring with Andre, I think they done a great job of being that tag team that's trying to tag team up on him and get him out. Andre eventually ended up winning, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I mean, the way it was all done was one of the better things on the show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I mean, that's a testament to, because I mean, that was right about the time Andre was starting to have some, health issues and stuff. He was still able to go a little bit. By the time WrestleMania 3 came over, his back was really bad, which was another, a year after, of course, WrestleMania 2. But I mean, I think Andre touched so much in the business that I've heard people say, like, with the Big Show, they tried to tell him you need to start working like a giant.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, to an extent, but I think what separated the Big Show from Andre, even having that shadow of, Andre over top of him, because he was supposed to be the second coming, and what separated him was the fact that he was able to do drop kicks off the top rope.
Yeah.
He was able to do kip up. You're not going to see Andre, laying flat on the mat and then kick up like Shawn Michaels does.
Right.
But I've seen Big Show do it.
Yep.
He may have had a little bit of an assist from the rope, but hey,
I mean,
that's still a
you still are
400,
seeing Andre.
500 pound, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's so many things that Andre left back for how to work as a big guy. But I think the evolution of how to work as a big guy, it evolved, and it came out more in how to work as a big guy, aka a giant, and also be able to work, showed more in The Undertaker.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you notice, The Undertaker started out to where he no-sold everything, which was what he was told to do.
Yeah.
No-sold everything because he was supposed to be dead. So how do you hurt something that's dead? But then, and he was real slow, real methodical. The only real thing he done that he ever picked up any speed when he first became The Undertaker was that flying clothesline he would do when he would Irish whip you into the ropes, and then he'd come up and then fly and hit the clothesline.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, he'd land and he started getting up slow again. You know what I'm saying? And it evolved from that slow, methodical big guy like Andre into a more athletic Undertaker.
Yeah.
Where he was diving over the top rope. You know what I'm saying? He was doing, a running leg drop. Well, what's that thing where he would snake eyes you in the corner, where he would hold you on his shoulder and then drop your face onto the turnbuckle, and then after he dropped you, he would take off, run, hit the ropes, and come up with a big boot. You know what I'm saying? It became more athletic based too. He was like, let me adapt this big man style, but put some athleticism into it so I can keep up with these other cats that are doing Hurricane Ranas and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think even though Andre touched even The Undertaker, Kane, look at Kane. Kane never really changed his style other than he didn't speed it up. But he sped it up, but he didn't like change any of the moves or anything. He's still done, the same basic moves in every match. But he also wasn't always just slow and sluggish like he started out as. And I think again, that's a testament to let's start with what Andre did.
Yeah. And
then find our own niche with it.
Yeah, I think Andre was kind of like the blueprint, you know what I'm saying? Because there was never a guy that big that wrestled, like Andre. And then once they learned, what you could do with Andre, then they tried to apply it to other big men later on. But I think it's also one of those things that kind of like evolution, like guys now are bigger, stronger, and faster than they were before and stuff. They're more agile as far as, big men and stuff. But you see big men now doing stuff that they normally wouldn't have done back then and shit. So, I mean, Andre definitely kind of led the way as far as when it came to being a big man. But as far as his impact, like he was one of those international stars. Like I don't think a lot of people realize that Andre just wasn't an American star. Like before he even came to America, like he was touring Africa, he was doing Europe, he was in Spain and shit, he was in Canada. Like his presence was already blown up so much bigger before he even came to America. Like we just added more to it and stuff. We just sensationalized his him being a giant more and more. So I mean, Andre just always had that like universal appeal to him and stuff because he had he had been around the world and stuff. Like one of the smartest things that they ever did was Vince realized that people get tired of seeing a giant all the time, that it loses appeal. So they put him on a constant tour where you'd only see him once a year. So it was a big appeal to see a giant because you wouldn't see a giant all the time and stuff. Nowadays with television and social media, you could see a giant always and stuff. There's nowhere really for them to hide. What I'm saying, because you can always track them or find them, or they're going to appear someplace else. Back then, it wasn't like that. It was like like when he came to town, like it was a big deal.
Mhm.
Because you might not see him for another year, and there was no YouTube to go and watch clips at. So
That's it. I would say Andre was probably the first true international superstar
Yeah.
in wrestling.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't think there's anybody who could argue that.
Yeah.
Hogan became, everybody says Hogan was the first worldwide star. No, he wasn't.
No.
Andre was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Because Andre even
came
went to Japan and wrestled and shit too.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Andre
he
had
really
a
did go
great
all
Japanese
over to
career.
wrestle.
Andre, yeah. What'd you say, Tucker?
I said Andre had a great career in New Japan or whatever
Yeah.
it was at that time.
Oh yeah, I mean him and like Giant Boba and stuff. Their version of Andre. They would have their battles and stuff and everything. But and I think that's. I don't know who necessarily won out of those matches or anything, but like I just think it's a respect factor that even they, other countries realized that, man, this is just something special.
Mm-hmm.
It's something special that we want to bring to our fans.
Yeah.
This is, like you said, it's a once in a lifetime thing. He may have come to your territory one time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you never, because of the fact that there was no cable or something back then.
No social media, no internet.
Right. So he came to town one time, and you've got a story to tell your kids and grandkids. Man, there was this dude who was a wrestler one time, and it's almost like a folk tale.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's almost like that's how, I don't know. It's kind of crazy the impact that he had without all that stuff. Even Hogan had the upstart of cable. So that and 24-hour news and stuff like that. So I mean, he had that platform. Literally, and even back when Andre started, what was it? He was born in 46. I think he started like when he was 17 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about what, like the 60s,
Yeah.
There were places in the United States in the 60s that you didn't know what was going on in their towns.
Right.
Yeah. If it wasn't on the national news, I didn't know what was going on one town over.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially if that town was further away.
Right.
There was just so I mean, and the only thing you had was the newspaper really back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
and
man,
if a giant comes to town, that's headline news.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's like it amazes me how big of an impact he did have. Just whenever I was doing some research and everything, it just amazes me the impact that he had without all those tools, like you were saying, Uncle Slam.
Yeah.
Do you think that they try to do that now with like people like Cody Rhodes and like Roman Reigns, like where they don't wrestle as much, try to make it be more significant when they do show up? Since they only might pop up, 15 times a year or some shit like that. Do you think they're trying to pull the same thing?
Yes, but I think they're also shooting themselves in the foot because every time I turn on the internet, I see Cody Rhodes on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was what made, even Hogan in the 80s, that was what made his appearances so great. I saw Hogan live one time in a house show. Every other time I saw Hogan was on pay-per-views.
Pay-per-view, yeah.
Or a Saturday night's main event.
Yeah.
I didn't see Hogan wrestling on Superstars.
Mm-mm.
But I saw Hogan would come out every now and then and do a Brother Love show on Superstars. So that made that Brother Love episode. I got to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Hogan's making an appearance. It's something big's happening, you know. It made it more important. And I think whenever, you know, and yes, Hogan was still making appearances back then. But, you know, he was doing Make-A-Wishes and, you know, live events and stuff, whatever, you know, other stuff he was doing and everything. I don't know, promotional tours and stuff. But it wasn't oversaturated through the media. And that's what I think is hurting it nowadays is it's oversaturated through the media.
Well, I think Cena has a big part to play in that as well, just because, like, I don't think anybody ever before, you know, as big as Andre is, as big as Hogan was, I don't think anybody has ever put in the hours, done the appearances, done the schedule that John Cena did. You know, because where, like you said, you know, you saw Hogan once at a house show. I went to probably a dozen different Raws or house shows or actual tapings at Rupp Arena, at Freedom Hall, Louisville, Lexington. And it seemed like every single one of them, John Cena main evented, and he was there. And he didn't just wrestle; he got on the mic afterwards at every house show. He interacted with the crowd. He was there. You know, he was out by the tour bus signing autographs. Like, and I think that almost like kind of spoiled WWE to having that face of the company who's willing to do that. And so they're almost trying to recapture that and maybe kind of pendulum. And now, like Uncle Slam was saying, you know, now Cody and Roman, you know, they're only doing 15, 20 shows a year just to try to recapture some of that gold.
Less is always more because it makes the appearances, you know, more meaningful.
Yeah.
But again, when it does, like I said, it's not that the appearances part is bad. It because I'm used to that, you know, again, grew up in the Hogan era.
Right.
You know, but it's well, I haven't seen Cody in 2 or 3 months. Let's go check what his Facebook page is saying.
Right.
Oh, he's just on vacation. He's just chilling. Well, let me catch up on what Cody's doing. So I can always go see what Cody's doing.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? When Hogan wasn't on TV, I didn't know he was in the hospital doing a Make-A-Wish thing.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? So there was more of a mystery. It made it more special whenever they were out there. So it made you want to hang on what they were saying.
Yeah.
You know,
And
the
it
other
would be so
guy,
bad if they didn't put the title on them and then make them disappear. That's what gets on my nerves. Don't put the world champion, you know, belt around somebody and then they disappear and only pop up, you know, like I said, 15 times a year to defend it and then disappear the rest. Like,
Right.
I want to see the belt. Like, I want to see a champ active and stuff. I don't want to see him every blue moon.
and at least Hogan was doing the house shows.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he had to do the house show tours because Hulkamania was too hot.
Right.
You know, but Hogan wasn't working Rupp Arena.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Hogan was working Madison Square Garden house
Yeah.
shows. He was, you know, he was touring the big cities.
Yeah.
You know, where they could really draw in the money. Rupp Arena was getting the Intercontinental Championship as its main event.
Yeah.
You know, which is nothing wrong with that, you know. But at the end of the day, it just, I don't know. I just wish they weren't so exposed, you know, to where you just see them all the time. But I do think it's a good thing that they're trying to do it within the wrestling.
Yeah.
I think that they just, I don't know, because you can't regulate, you know, social media. It's their personal page. If they want to get on there and post a picture and tell you that they're riding horses because, you know, they're taking a vacation or whatever, you know, that's fine. It's their business. I wish they would personally look at it and say, man, it would be so much more of a shock. And we'll look at the Roman Reigns reactions. I don't see a whole lot of Roman Reigns stuff.
Uh-uh.
I don't see him out doing podcasts and interviews and stuff.
Uh-uh.
And look at the pops he gets when he does show up.
Yeah.
So it's like the only thing that I hate is the leaks of he's showing up tonight. Well, that ruined it.
Yeah,
Because now I'm expecting it.
right.
Are you wishing there'd be more kayfabe? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, I really do.
Yeah.
At least in that aspect of it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So let me ask y'all this. We'll start with Uncle Slam, and then go to the walking one liner, the trademark man himself. What is your favorite? It's a 2-part question.
All right.
What is your favorite Andre match? And what is your favorite Andre moment?
Good question. I would say favorite moment would have to be when he ripped the necklace off Hogan. He's bleeding a little bit or whatever. Um, I want to say the obvious one is where Hogan beat Andre to kind of take the thing, but I don't want to use that one. I want to say it was the one where he beat the shit out of fucking was it Big John Stud or whatever, made him go home or whatever because he was stepping over the rope. Yeah, that one right there. When he beat him so bad, he was like, I got to get out of here.
So that's your favorite match or moment?
That's probably my favorite match. Favorite moment would have to probably be when he ripped the cross off and Hogan was like, "What, Andre? What, Andre? No, brother, come on."
What are you doing, brother?
Yeah,
Andre.
Yeah.
Don't do this, man.
That's my favorite moment. Favorite match has got to be Big John, where he literally got the shit beat out of him for real. So.
Okay. Tuck.
I tell you, my favorite match that I've ever seen Andre in. I don't know if you all would remember back mid 2000s. You go to the Dollar General and they'd have like these little thin ass DVDs in just like a paper thin sleeve, like a little, like the DVD cases, but they weren't nearly as thick, and they were like $1 a piece.
Oh yeah.
And I bought one that was wrestling matches from like the 70s. There was like, some of them was like King Kong Bundy wrestling in a high school gymnasium. Just a weird random compilation. One of them was Ric Flair versus Andre the Giant. Andre had the big, huge fucking fro, and he was wearing the little blue trunks. And him and Flair went, and everything that we've been talking about is pretty much encapsulated in this match. I don't remember the match itself as much as I remember the electric, tiny ass crowd that, it wasn't oversaturated. That probably was the first time that any of them had ever been to a live show. Definitely the first time I'd say they'd ever seen Andre. And it was just a fun little match, and that was on there. So that was probably my favorite match. Flair, of course, lost. Andre beat him, but the back and forth, it was almost like Shawn and Taker, like the big guy and the little guy, but like they made it believable. And I don't even remember what promotion it was. It had to have been NWA, I would assume, if it was Flair, or maybe they were just on the indie somewhere. But that's probably my favorite match, because obviously you want to go WrestleMania 3 like Uncle Slam said, but that was just an all around good wrestling match. There was hip tosses and chokeholds, and it was everything that you thought of for the wrestling in the 70s or early 80s. My favorite moment has to be just because of the lore behind it, that iconic shot of the little mini ring that carried him and Bobby the Brain Heenan out to the ring at WrestleMania 3. When you watch that now and you realize they probably created that whole setup, that whole entrance, because of his health issues. I think everybody used that method to come in. But looking back, when you know the behind the scenes story, you realize that they probably created this entire rig setup just for the simple fact that just that show of respect to Andre. Letting him
let's help him get through tonight.
Let's get him through tonight. I think Hogan used it. I know Andre used it, but what I'm talking about, right? Like the little tiny ring.
Oh yeah,
and they carted him off. And you have to know and assume that the whole reason they did that was to stop him from having to make that walk to the ring. And the whole match, he's holding onto the ropes. He can barely stand. And when you know the behind the scenes, it just makes it that much more iconic.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like one of the, just knowing how much that had to have cost. And they did it for him. Such a huge sign of respect and all that.
For me, I have a hard time with my favorite match because I can't say I was a huge fan of any match of Andre's.
Yeah.
You know, they were all good and memorable because they were Andre. But I mean, I really enjoyed the fact that they gave him his flowers, and you know, before he retired, they let him be a world tag team champion. You know, I think it would have been cool if he could have like beat the Warrior for the Intercontinental Championship, you know, but I understand what they were doing. They were trying to do the Hogan thing with Warrior where, you know, he defeats David versus Goliath.
Yeah.
You know, he defeats the giant, so he's passed the test, you know. Oh, the power of the Warriors. But no. My favorite moment, I think, had to be the second that referee hit that 3 count after Hogan pinned Warrior at WrestleMania 3. And the reason I say that is because I was really thinking about this last night. And, you know, we've seen passing of the torches. You know, we've seen Hogan pass it over to Rock. You know, we've just seen Cena pass it over to Gunther. You know, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it several times. You know, I mean, you know, to an extent, not that he needed it, but we kind of seen it with Shawn passing it over to Taker. You know, it's yours for the next few years. You know what I'm saying? Not, like I said, not that Taker needed it at that point. But, you know, it was just the respect factor in that match that you know, you're the guy I respect enough to put the end to my career, you know, so I'm going to give you those flowers and that torch, you know what I'm saying, in that sense.
Yeah.
But as far as passing the torch, I have never seen a more pure passing of the torch than when Andre finally looked at him, because they said after the match, Hogan, while he was sitting there pinning him, he said, "Thank you, boss." And Andre said, "You the boss now."
Wow.
I was like, I don't think I've ever heard a more pure passing of the torch story. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to me, that, you know, the match wasn't, you know, the greatest match in the world because, like we've touched on, the limitations of Andre. I believe the majority of the match was Andre holding Hogan by the neck, you know, clamping down on his neck and everything, just so he didn't have to move too much and he could just stand there and kind of, you know, do nothing. But it made it believable. You know what I'm saying? Big guy like that gets a hold of you, he's going to cinch it in until, you know. But, you know, the body slam was iconic.
Yeah.
But
almost like cathartic, you know, with that passing of the torch. Because again, you know, I think I said it earlier, one of us did. If he didn't want to drop it, he wasn't gonna drop it.
Right. You know, if he didn't want to do something, I don't know of any human being on earth at the time that he was alive that was going to look at him and say, I'm going to make you.
Yeah.
You know, even when I wouldn't want Andre to grab a hold of me sitting on a couch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just know that, you know, once that man gets you in his hand, you're not going anywhere until he decides you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, what do you do? You know, and then it's a testament to him, you know, like he said, because he could have easily, you know, when Hogan showed him the respect of calling him boss.
Huh.
And he turned around and said, "No, you're the boss now."
Yep.
You know, that's again, I think that's the purest passing of the torch story I've ever heard in wrestling.
Yeah.
There was no
I'd say,
selfishness in it.
yeah.
It was completely, I know I'm done. I've had my fun. It's been a great run. And plus, I think Andre knew that time was limited.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just like, let's do this now while I can do it. You know, this is the last thing that I can truly give back to wrestling.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Andre wasn't a guy who could be a pilot of a plane.
Right.
You know, he couldn't necessarily go work in all factories and stuff and everything. He was just too big. The world's not built for people like him.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't join the army. They kicked him out. He actually got drafted to fight in the war, and he was so big and so tall that they couldn't find a uniform or shoes for him, so they couldn't let him in the army.
Well, not only that, could you think about the sore the target he is?
Exactly. I mean,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're marching and it'll hit the guy that's 3 feet taller than everybody else. Look, it's a walking tree. But I mean, you know, well, I mean, and some of the sad stories to that same context was like, you know, I've heard, you know, I've heard stories of just the mental toll being that
you got to
big,
figure not being able to find a bed, not being able to take a
Yes.
shower like normal people,
Yeah.
having to buy, you know, 3 or 4 plane tickets just, you know, to fly on a plane and stuff. Like,
Well, and there's the one story, you know, and I don't mean this as an embarrassment to him, but it just goes to show you the extent of which this went to is, you know, he would fly on a plane and 12 hours over Japan. Well, you gotta go to the bathroom. Well, he can't fit in that bathroom.
Uh-huh.
yeah, he had to
So
use the bucket and
he-
shit sometimes.
Yeah, they would get a trash can
Oh my
and
god.
let him use the bathroom in the trash can. Now, yes, that's gross as hell, but poor him. That's how embarrassing is
Yeah,
that?
that's a, hell yeah. I mean, I can.
You know,
can
I mean, the mental toll being that big, you know, for all its ups and everything that it brought to Andre and all the positives it brought of, you know, the fame and fortune and everything, which, you know, to his graces, he was smart enough to go out and buy a bunch of property in like North Carolina. I'm not trying to give, I don't know where in North Carolina.
he had
I
a
think
ranch
one
out
of the-
there. I think it was.
Yeah. You know, his daughter owns it now and everything, you know. So he was smart enough to go out there and know that, hey, you know I have this disease. I know time is limited. I'm making a lot of money. Let me buy something to give it to my kids, to be able to leave to my kids, you know, generational type wealth thing.
Yeah.
But it was like the mental toll, you know, how many times did he go, man, I just don't want to get on that plane.
Yeah.
You know, 12
There's,
hours of sitting on a park bench.
There's a great interview that he did on the set of Princess Bride that I don't know if you all caught it or not. I was, you know, kind of doing some research and stuff, getting ready for this. And he was talking about how great Rob Reiner was and, you know, how comfortable he made him. Like they had him like a little 3-wheeler that he would go around set on and drive and stuff. And he is doing this interview and he says something about, you know, basically what you're saying, you know, they don't think about big people. They don't think about tall people. You know, they make space and they do special things for crippled people and blind people and deaf people. And like, he just has this whole list. He's like, but they don't do anything for people like me. You know, there's not a special section for big people. And he was quoted something about, I think this was Rob Reiner saying how happy he was on the set of Princess Bride. And he's like, oh, you know, you really like acting that much or something along those lines. He said, no, people don't stare at me here. Like just on set, he was just one of them. He was just another actor. And he's like, it's nice. You know, I walk along the set and, you know, walk by or whatever. And people don't stare at me.
Then they say hi, boss, or something
They
like
say hi,
that.
boss. Yeah. Yeah. Like that was his life, you know, like I think Rob Reiner's kids or one of the actor's kids wanted to meet him. So he brought him into his trailers like, hey, my kids want to meet you. Is that all right? He said, yeah. And they walked in, laid eyes on him, screamed, cried, and ran off. And he was like, man, Andre, I'm so sorry. He's like, it happens sometimes. I mean, yeah, that's just part of it. It's not the first time it happened. It won't be the last type thing. Sometimes kids love me. Sometimes they're terrified of me. And that was his life. Yeah. The mental toll, I can't even imagine.
It's crazy. Because if people knew that, like, just the stories that I've heard is he truly was a gentle giant.
Mm-hmm.
He loved to just eat good food, hang out on his ranch and drink his wine.
Yep.
Boy, he could drink the hell out of some wine too, from what I've heard.
Well, obviously, we've heard the stories of the giant meals or the 100 beers at one sitting, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Eating 16 steaks. Was it like? I think 10 lobster tails. With like so many beers, so many bottles of wine, and then like Jack Daniels at the end or something like that. Like,
I think it was Flair. I heard one time. I'm pretty sure it was Ric Flair, but somebody said somebody asked him, like, what's your craziest Andre story? And his response was basically like, it doesn't matter. somebody tells you an Andre story, doesn't matter if it was true or not. You believe it.
Right. it's exactly
doesn't matter what my craziest one is. It was, like, and the thing is, like, it's like, like the lobster and the wine and the beer and all that. I guarantee ain't nobody ever heard the craziest Andre story because that person's probably dead and gone. But you hear a story about Andre and you just think, yeah, I believe it. That makes sense.
Don't see why it couldn't be.
Don't see why it couldn't be. Exactly.
Well,
yeah,
see,
he was. This kid pissed him off one time, so he flipped his Volkswagen upside down.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. Like, supposedly there's witnesses to that too.
Yeah,
I can't remember what wrestlers because they were going down the road or something, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but something happened, and like they ended up being like right beside the people or something. And he got out of the car and just flipped the damn car.
Yeah. I've heard told that he flipped it over. I've heard it told that he just picked up their rear end and they just sat there with their foot on the gas while the wheels spun, and he just held it up.
And I mean, hey, a Volkswagen, the engine's in the back too.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, so it actually kind of segues good into what I was going to ask next before we, start wrapping this up. This little bio of Andre. Don't forget, guys, comment and tell us what you think about Andre the Giant. You know what I'm saying? I mean, give us your stories about Andre that you all like the most too, and everything. I know it's a little late to say that, but hey, do it anyway. It's fun. But look, I'm over here looking at stuff too. So my next, I'll start it out, but my next question was going to be, after I tell mine, what is y'all's favorite Andre story? So mine personally was told by Bobby the Brain Heenan. Like, I think it's hilarious that he did this, but it was when Andre and Warrior were working together, and Bobby said that Andre liked to do that spot where he would shoot you into the ropes, and then he'd throw a clothesline and you'd duck it, and you'd bounce off the other ropes, and Andre'd turn around and you'd clothesline him, and he'd, do the stumble. Well, you'd bounce off the ropes again, clothesline him a couple of times, and Andre'd fall back and wrap his arms up into the ropes and everything. Gave him a little breather and everything in the match and everything, kind of let him sit down for a second. And then it made you look good too, because it gave you a chance to be able to beat up Andre the Giant, So he says he done that the first night with the Warrior. He said, and Bobby said, no sooner than he turned around, there was the Ultimate Warrior going 450 miles an hour. And bam, right into Andre's chest. And he said, I remember Bobby said, I heard Boss go, oh. He said, uh-oh, something's going to happen. He said, so the next night they did the same spot. 500 miles an hour. Next night, 600 miles an hour. So he said, finally, the next night, Andre had had enough. So they went to do the spot, and no sooner than Andre threw that clothesline and he ducked it, Andre immediately spun around as quick as he could and just stood there and put his fist out like that. And Ultimate Warrior come off them ropes, man, wasn't ready for it and said, bam. He said he cracked his pain. He said, Ultimate Warrior sitting there grabbing for the ropes, everything's wobbling and everything. He said, Andre got out of the ring that night, walked into the locker room, looked at Bobby and said, you'll learn.
Yep.
Classic, man. I mean, hey, you should have got if the guy grunted at me like that.
Oh my God!
I'd have been like, I'm sorry, sir. What did I do? Did I breathe the wrong way?
Yeah.
Please do not cave my face in with your thumb. I mean, Andre's one of them guys who just grab the back of your head with his hand like this and just push with his thumb.
Yeah.
So what, Tucker, what's your favorite Andre story?
So I'm gonna have to go with an honorable mention for what's her name, the actress that played Jenny in Forrest Gump, and she was the princess in Princess Bride. She tells a story on the Princess
Robin
Bride.
Wright?
Yes, Robin Wright,
Yeah.
where how they're out shooting one day. And she starts crying, telling the story about like they were out shooting and it was really cold. And she said that Andre would walk up to her and he would take his whole hand and put it on top of her head. And his hand would cover her face and everything. And he was and it would warm her up. And they would sit out there in the cold. And in between takes, he'd walk over to her and he'd put his hand on her head and it helped keep her warm. Just, showing what a gentle giant he is and stuff. But as far as wrestling goes, I'm going to steal one from Hulk Hogan. I guess Hogan had, I'm assuming this was back in his more agile days for Andre, but he had met a girl at a bar the night before, or he knew this chick and he invited her to a live event. And he said that he kept taking bumps outside the ring, like Andre throw him up against the ropes and he'd go through the ropes and he'd be selling and, he'd wink at this girl or whatever, and Andre started picking up on it that every time he threw him up against these ropes, he was taking a fall and going outside. So he said he finally had enough of it. He threw him out and he fell at the girl's feet and all this stuff. He said Andre climbed over the ropes. Hogan was down. He just reached down, grabbed him by his trunks, and picked him up. And his junk fell out and he's just sitting there and he's just holding him, and he takes and he throws Hogan by his trunks back over into the ring, gets back in there, grabs him up again and says, "No more girls." Yes, boss.
That's great. I heard that story a long time ago before too. It is good. Because that was the way Andre was. He'd say about 3 words and that was it. You know what I'm saying? You knew if he was yelling, you'd done something you didn't need to do.
Yep.
Uncle Slam, what's your favorite Andre story?
I think I probably already said it, honestly. We talked about, the one where he was with Will Chamberlain and Arnold Schwarzenegger and set him up on the ledge, and
Yeah.
the meal with the 16 steaks and the lobsters and the beer and the alcohol and stuff. There was, of course, the Army one, where I was kind of telling you where he was so big he couldn't go. But kind of the story on that was that he was walking with a friend of his, to the draft or whatever, and the guy who was for the Army saw them both coming, but he was talking to another guy, and he was like, "Man, look at these guys coming. This one guy's really really short." I was like, "I don't think he's gonna be able to make it into the Army and stuff because he's so small." Closer and closer they got, they realized that the one guy was normal size and that Andre was actually really fucking huge. And he's like, "I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that guy. I think we're gonna have to worry about the other guy, because he's so big." And how they had also talked about his finger was so big, his ring was so big, you could put it with I think it was like a silver dollar through it.
That's
His ring
crazy.
size was that big, where his hands were so big you could put a whole silver dollar through his ring.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's just one finger.
Yo, oh yeah, yeah. His
Like I
hands were
said,
massive. Just like you said, he
yeah,
covered old girl's head. He used to keep them warm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to reiterate. If that man gets his hands on you, you ain't going nowhere till he says you are. That's just it. Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Andre definitely he transcended wrestling. And I think he was really the first wrestler that ever did that. You know, everybody, again, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him because it's almost like Hogan took it to the next level.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Andre transcended wrestling because it wasn't until later in his life that he was acting. You know, he transcended wrestling because of just who he was in general. You know, it was what is this massive guy walking through the airport? You know, who is, even if you didn't watch wrestling, you noticed Andre the Giant walking through an airport, you know, and I'm sure later on in life you'd see pictures and be like, oh, that's who that was, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, it wasn't even about Hollywood or anything like that transcending wrestling like The Rock has done, and, you know, other stars. But it was just about being Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
You know, he that's the one thing, you know, Hollywood actors, they cannot take a movie for a few months and go hide out somewhere and not be noticed for, you know, months, years if they want to.
Yeah.
You know, politicians, you know, wrestlers, athletes, all these rich people, they can go and kind of take a break from what it is that made them famous. Andre could never take a break from being huge.
Yeah.
And like we touched on earlier, how much of a think about if the second Jim Carrey got done shooting this movie, it was straight into this movie and then straight into this movie and then straight into this movie. And there was never a break.
And you also got to think that he was one of the first white guys to rock a fro.
Right?
Right. When a lot of white dudes, with afros back then, and Andre had an afro.
A
for sure.
French dude, too,
Yeah.
on top of that. A French fro.
Exactly.
Not a French fry. Not a French fro. But yeah, it just, you know, it's so crazy to think that he just never was able to escape just being him.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, how much of a toll did that take? And, you know, Andre transcended wrestling like no other. He's definitely left his mark over the past, well, since I've watched wrestling. Again, I don't know of a big man that, you know, doesn't do some kind of how many big men have you seen throw somebody in the corner and they turn around and grab the ropes and back up into them? You know what I'm saying? Basically put their butt into them and everything. That was Andre's stick. You know what I'm saying? It's the simple little things too that he's touched. So, I mean, like I said earlier, I would have to put Andre on that Mount Rushmore of wrestlers that just transcended wrestling and carried wrestling in and of itself.
Yeah.
You know, when he decided to hand it over to Hogan, that's what, you know, and then Hogan did successful with it, and that's what puts Hogan on there too, but he was the original.
Yeah.
He was the guy that started it and gave them the blueprint of what to do with Hulkamania.
Mm-hmm.
Because cable was coming in. That's just my final take on Andre. Uncle Slam, Tucker, I'll leave it to you all to give y'all's final takes, and we will ring that bell afterwards.
All right. Like anybody, like you said, I was blessed enough to be able to see Andre. You know, unfortunately, it was in his later years. I kind of like with y'all. He was bigger than his wrestling. If you just look at Vince's comments or, you know, his interview when they talk about Andre, Vince almost really tears up a whole lot. Like he meant a whole lot to Vince. Like he was special. That's the way Vince put him. He was like he was special. Like if you ever get a chance, look at Vince talk about Andre. Like he definitely felt some type of love, some type of bond with him and stuff. And I think that comes across in a lot of people as far as Andre's impact. He wasn't the greatest wrestler. He obviously wasn't that technical and stuff, but his impact and his mainstream appeal to the sport and everybody came across was just it was larger than life. It was as big as he was. So to me, he'll always be the giant. He'll always be something special or whatever. Because he was in my childhood. So like when I think of wrestling, I think of Andre probably right up there with the Stone Cold, with the Hogan. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's Andre, Hogan, Stone Cold / Rock, then Cena as far as carrying wrestling, like into different eras or whatever. So I got nothing but love for for the Gentle Giant. So that's just my thought.
Walking one-liner. What's your final thoughts?
Did we lose him? Then we lost him. Oh, there he is.
Oh, we've lost him.
Technical difficulties. Hold on.
Yep. We'll give him a second to come in here and say his final thoughts. Yeah. Oh, there he goes.
I got to figure out how to do the do not disturb thing. I do. I just don't. Have
Or just go buy a power cord for that
the
laptop, and there you go.
Yep, that's what I need to do. So from obviously, Andre, he died a year before I was born. So the only thing I have is just I never got to see him wrestle. Never wasn't even around at that time. But I think like we've talked a little bit about his Hollywood and stuff, and how you said that you can't escape it. Like it always whenever you're credited him in a movie, it always fascinates me. Whenever you got somebody like Andre, who he's not credited in the movie as Andre Rene whatever. It's like he's Andre the Giant.
Yep.
And like there's no escaping that. And so my introduction to him was The Princess Bride. I remember watching that movie, back whenever I was a kid and stuff, and just being like, who is this guy? And then as I'm starting to get into wrestling, with you and stuff, like this was back, I think, SmackDown versus Raw, the original one. And we'd come over on weekends and stuff and play. And I remember knowing jack shit about wrestling, but scrolling through the character, I see, I recognize that dude. That's Andre the Giant. Yeah, I want to play as him.
Yep.
9, 10 years old, 12 years after he was dead and gone, and I'm scrolling through a list of people who I didn't know from anybody. Might have known The Rock, might have known Stone Cold Steve Austin, whatever, but there's Andre the Giant. I want to play as him.
So see, you could almost say that Andre's who got you into wrestling.
Yeah.
Who he at least piqued your interest in wrestling. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, of course, you're one of the smart people that knows that Shawn Michaels is the greatest of all time.
Lord.
But,
gotta teach him right. That's why you gotta teach him right.
That's right, and I did.
It's all right. You're allowed to be wrong. There's nothing wrong with that.
I remember playing that game and playing as Andre. And one of the move sets, whenever they're on the ground, is he just steps on the dude.
Yeah.
Just
steps
boot
up
on the chest and then steps over it. And I remember like, I guess like you obviously were playing too. And like Tyler was probably there. And like he steps on the dude, walks over it. And I remember going, I think I asked you, I'm like, was that really a move of his? Like, yeah. Yeah, that's what he do. Just steps on the guy. Steps over him.
Yep. I mean, but when you're 500 pounds, what else do you need to do?
Yeah.
You step on my chest and you're 500 pounds and walk over
Right.
top of me. I gave up 5 seconds ago.
Right.
Because I don't even want to do that. Can we just skip that
Exactly.
spot? Yeah, it's Andre. Andre was definitely one of a kind. Well, guys, I don't have anything else about the eighth wonder of the world, Andre the Giant. Anybody else got anything?
On tap. I think we covered it.
I do want to say that we are going to be kind of tweaking our format a little bit on shows and everything, especially our recap show. We're going to start having, and we're brainstorming it right now, but we're going to have more segments. All the segments may not be on the same show. They may, just be certain segments we do for certain topics or whatever. But we're going to try to do some, special segments and, get some more interactive with our fans and everything. Because we want you all to bring in the questions, especially while we're live and everything, because we want to be able to, answer stuff live, get your all's opinions on the topics that we're talking about and everything. We definitely want y'all's input about anything and everything we're doing, as long as it's, positive input. No, I'm just joking. We want the negative too, because we want to know exactly what we're doing that you all like and what we're doing that you all don't like. But yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that some format might be, getting tweaked a little bit. Nothing radical or anything like that, but just to get you all more interactive and, be able to, talk to you all more and everything, because we appreciate you all being here. Don't forget, go to EWA tonight. It's going to be a great show. We covered it on our recap show earlier. So if you don't know, now you do know. And guys, that's all I got. The referee has hit that 3 count. So we are going to ring that damn bell.
The